Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Hawks Watch podcast. This is your host, James Arnold, and we are on the now fourth episode of this podcast. And I do appreciate everyone who's been coming back and listening to this podcast. Really do appreciate it. Thank you for listening. Today, it's been a while, been a few weeks since I've talked to you guys. So today, we've got end of summer league to talk about, kind of going through what happened there, trade news, marginal moves that the Hawks have made in the last few weeks, and really an update on where the roster is now, because, just want to kind of, as we go into the off season, kind of look at where are we at, where's the roster, and what moves may we be able to expect before the beginning of the season. So let's get into it. So, gonna start off here talking about the end of Summer League. Last time I talked to you guys, I had kind of covered the first game just to talk about Ricochet versus Sar and, kind of what happened there with the first game. Just seeing how Ricochet came out and, kind of saw what you needed to see from him. Duricic had a good first quarter, rough rest of the game. And then, so just want to kind of go over what happened with the rest of Summer League there. Ricochet, again, I think you saw what you needed to see from him. He only played a couple games, but was able to flash his impressive passing, his decision making, and point of attack defense, which is really important for this team. As we've talked about, that's, part of the roster that, or part of the, on this roster, we haven't had any point of attack defense, and now we have, Ricochet, Dyson Daniels, Keaton Wallace, Vít Krejci. We just have a more well-rounded and versatile roster when it comes to the defenders that we have on this team at this point. So seeing that, defense from Ricochet, at his size, 6'10", seeing him really get up. I mean, something that's going to be important for him is just getting up high volume of three-pointers. Like, that is very crucial for what the Hawks want, him to do. So just adjusting from, where he was, shooting 3-4 three-pointers a night, in the professional league that he played in, in Europe, coming to the Hawks, like, they're going to want him to shoot, 7, 8, 9, 10 threes a game, and hopefully just increase that volume, and, maintain the accuracy. So just seeing him being willing to get up those shots and make a few of them. He didn't shoot at an insanely high level, but, it was good to see him taking threes and, kind of doing what they're going to want him to do there. And then moving on to Duricic, so we didn't get to see too much from him. He actually ended up breaking his foot in the second game, and so, who knows how long he's going to be out. Maybe, I believe the time frame was about November until he's going to be reevaluated, so he's going to be out for a while. He's going to miss training camp, and currently he is not signed with the Hawks at all. So, he was a second-round pick. All the two-way spots for the Hawks have been now signed to. So, he's probably going to be stashed in Europe, playing with some, European team. I don't know if he's going to sign with the Hawks, but his fate has yet to be decided. So we shall see what happens with Duricic, but you were at least able to see, flashes of a player that, could be useful down the line. But we will see what happens with him. Again, no telling. It's kind of up in the air when it comes to Duricic. Now, Mohamed Gay, in terms of Summer League, he had an up and down, showing. He was, as I mentioned last time, on the floor basically the whole first game that I saw. And that was a theme that continued to, he was basically on the ground multiple times during that whole week. But he should be ready for us, next season. He did have a little bit of a lost season last season, so should it be able to help a little bit more this year, assuming some development. But again, since he lost last season, he wasn't able to be in the system and advance in the way that maybe you would have hoped. So he's still, work in progress, but should be able to be, a good depth piece, if nothing else, this year. Keaton Wallace already kind of went into depth about him last time, but great two-way signing. I believe he's about 25. Brother of Casey Wallace. He is a good point of attack defender, a good, scorer, able to run the offense. He's not a high-level passer, but he can make the right reads and run your offense in a pinch. But he is, just a good two-way signing, with us not having a whole lot to back up Trey at the guard spot. And Kobe, isn't really a proven rotation player in the NBA so far. I think he's going to be good. I'm definitely a fan of Kobe, but, he showed a lot in the G League, but he hasn't really been, on the floor, the main point guard. So just having Keaton Wallace is kind of insurance policy, and honestly, I think we still need to sign, another guard, whether it's, maybe like that Lou Williams role where he doesn't have to play every night. If Kobe does, has it that night, he doesn't have to play. If Kobe doesn't have it or is hurt, or, if Trey's hurt, we may need someone to step in into that role just because we don't have a lot of depth at the guard position, mainly DeJounte and Trey pretty much took all of those minutes last season. So, trading DeJounte away, there is a lot of usage at the point guard position and just shot creating that is going to need to, there's some slack that's going to need to be picked up. So, we shall see. I'm still looking at, maybe they will sign another guard and make some other moves, but currently, they have too many players. There's a roster crunch and too many centers, and so we'll see if they do make any more moves before the end of the season. But technically, if they stayed pat, they are currently, a million or so under the luxury tax. They do have 15 full-time, roster slots and 3 two-way signings, so they should be, able to just roll into the season with this roster, assuming that they can't, get anything done with the centers. Now, E.J. Liddell was also on this Summer League roster, and he has actually been traded since to the Suns, who actually, I believe, waived him, but we traded him for David Roddy, who is... he's from the Suns. He's played a stint with the Grizzlies. He's a 3-4 type player, so combo big man, can play at the 3, can play at the 4. His nickname is Big Body Roddy. He is 6'4" and weighs a ton. If you go look him up, he is a huge guy, and so he almost fits kind of that Sadiq Bey mold, where he's, super big and physical, not the greatest vertical or lateral athlete, but is just extremely strong. He was supposed to have some shooting ability. That's kind of the question on him. If he can, stand in the corner and just consistently hit the 3 ball, he's going to be a useful player just for his, defensive ability with how stout he is. And then if he can knock down the three, that's a guy that you can just stick at the 3 or 4 for, a couple minutes here and there on a night when, DeAndre Hunter or, someone is hurt. Maybe multiple guys are hurt. He's just a depth piece, kind of that, 14th, 15th man that you want in your rotation just to kind of have him, which is same spot that EJ Liddell was kind of slotted into. Now, EJ was more of a 4-5, even though he was only 6'6". He honestly played like a center and really had a lot more rim protection. Now, David Roddy doesn't have the rim protection ability that EJ has, but it's just he fits better with the roster in that he can play the 3 and the 4. We already have, 4 centers on this roster, which we will get to in a minute. But, it was a solid 1-for-1 trade. There was nothing else but EJ traded for Roddy, so it was really just a 1-for-1, challenge type trade. So, not a huge move there, but did want to cover that the Hawks made that move and that EJ Liddell will no longer be with the team. So we'll have David Roddy kind of slotted into that 14th and 15th man on the rotation type role. Now, another marginal move that was made was a two-way signing of Dominic Barlow, and this was actually a fantastic move. Barlow has been in the league for a couple years, but he is only 21, so that is pretty much draft age. He's a combo big, so plays, the 4 and the 5. He is 6'10". He is not super bulky, so he's kind of, one of those tweener bigs. 6'10". He has some ball skills. It's almost similar to a Okongwu, but a Okongwu is just 1 inch shorter but has a lot more bulk. But as far as the ball skills and, offensive ability to handle the ball, pass the ball, move the ball in the offense, that is something that he excels at, and he dominated in the G League last year. It was absolutely incredible. I believe he had about 25 points a game and 8 or 9 rebounds, so really was truly dominant in the G League, again at 21 years old. This is a guy that many have kind of said that if he was in this year's draft class, that he would be a first round pick. So it's basically like we got a first round pick, in this 2024 draft class for nothing and signed him to a two-way, which is something in late July that just doesn't really happen. So, a lot of people were surprised that this was able to, be done. I believe he was on, part of the actual Spurs rotation, and a lot of Spurs fans were actually mad that he was, picked up by the Hawks and that he wasn't going to be in San Antonio. And so, if Spurs fans are mad, I'm happy. So, just because that's a great organization, and generally, they keep the right guys, but it sounds like somehow they did not sign him, and the Hawks got a great pickup here on a two-way signing. There's really no downside for the team. He'll be a depth piece again at the 4 or 5, has good ball skills, fine defender. It's a two-way slot, so you're not even giving him a full roster slot. Even if this had been a minimum signing, would have been worth it to me. So really can't say enough good about the two-way signing with Dominic Barlow, and, hopefully he's a good addition to this team. And I almost forgot to talk about this, but did want to go over, Bruno Fernando. He was actually waived, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about this here in a second, but, with the roster crunch at the center position, so we've got 4 guys under contract there, and Bruno, we had to decide on his guarantee date sometime in June, or the Hawks did, as to whether we were going to guarantee his contract and if he was going to be on the roster for next season. They pushed that out a couple times. It was clear that they didn't want to get rid of him. They like Bruno as a person, and secondly as a player as well, and he's slots really well into that third center role just to have as a depth piece on your roster. That maybe 12th man, 13th man. He's really good at that role and just nice to have for depth. But currently, again, we have 4 centers on the roster now. 2 of those are starting caliber, centers. So there's a lot of depth at the center position. And honestly, a crunch at that position. There's too much money tied up and too many players that play that you generally don't want to tie up a whole lot of assets in the center position. So, there's a decision to make there. Unfortunately, they were trying to make moves and, clearly we're trying to make moves and weren't able to get anything done there because they're valuing their players. They don't want to trade Capella for nothing. They don't want to trade Nance for nothing just to get them moved. Out of those 2 guys, Nance probably has a higher market or a better market just because he makes less money. Both are expiring guys, but Nance makes a little less and is pretty functional type of role player. So, he could definitely be traded still before the offseason, but, likely they certainly can go into the season with all 4 of those guys. But Bruno is no longer with us. I believe he actually signed a couple days after with the Raptors, but he will no longer be with the Hawks, unfortunately, due to the roster crunch. So wanted to mention that and go over that. I am going to cover now the, what the roster actually looks like. So at the point guard position, just to go over, kind of the depth chart and where we're at now, because this has changed so much since I recorded the first episode and kind of went over all these things. This conversation has evolved so much in the last, 5-6 weeks. So kind of want to update on where we're at with the roster. At point guard, we've got Trae Young, of course, Kobe Buffkin, second-year player, Keaton Wallace on the 2-way contract, and that's all we have at point guard. So definitely, room to add more depth there. At shooting guard, we've got Bogdan Bogdanovic, Dyson Daniels, Garrison Matthews. It's unclear, between Bogey and Dyson, who's going to start there. They're both, Bogey is, of course, probably third best player on this team currently. So, he's definitely starter level. The question there is, the defense with Trae, of course, offensively, they are elite together. And really also the health with him, just because he is getting older. His knees have been in, rough shape from season to season. He's been an injury-prone guy, so they have liked him in that 6-man role where he's able to come off the bench, play 25 minutes a night instead of, 30, 33, 35 minutes. And he's really good at that role as well. And, provide some passing and, continuity with that second unit and some shooting there as well. So it's unclear whether Bogey or Dyson is going to start. I would probably lean towards starting Dyson with Trae just to get size and that, elite point of attack defense next to Trae. I also believe a little bit more than some in Dyson shooting. Just, I don't know if people have been watching him in the Olympics, but he has been absolutely incredible on the defensive end and has also shown some promise on the offensive end, just getting his own bucket, making the right passes, getting people open for layups, open three-pointers, and finishing as well. So I'm super excited about Dyson. I think he should probably start next to Trae, and Bogey should probably remain in that 6-man role where he's really featured, as a high-usage player off the bench. But we shall see. At the 3 position, so we have Zachary Risacher, number 1 pick from this draft class, DeAndre Hunter. We've got Vit Krejci. And then we've got Seth Lundy, who is signed to a 2-way. Not sure, again, who's going to start there, Zachary Risache or DeAndre Hunter. DeAndre Hunter is also, he's been in trade talks and definitely has been available for the Hawks. So we shall see if it's seeming like he's probably going to be on this roster by the start of the season, but not sure, who they're going to plan to start there. I would love to see Risache starting, but don't know that that's going to happen immediately, day one. So we shall see what they do there. Probably depends on what they do at the shooting guard as well, who starts there. So it's more about lineups really than who's starting, who's not. Some of these guys are probably, a lot of them will be in the 20, 25, 27 minutes per game range. So, not everyone's going to be needing to play 36 plus minutes a night like some, teams have their starters doing. So we shall see. It's not that big a deal, but it'll be interesting to see what the lineups are. At power forward, we've got Jalen Johnson, Mohamed Gay, David Roddy, and Dominic Barlow signed to that new two-way deal. So, good depth there. Jalen is definitely going to be the starter with Moge and David Roddy, probably backing him up as well as Dominic Barlow at times, potentially. Also there, so at center we have Clint Capella, Onyeka Kongwu, Larry Nance, and Cody Zeller. So Larry Nance can actually play the four, and so he is he's not a great starter level guy. He's not going to blow you away, but he is a good role player. He plays solid defense. He is able to, run the offense and run the defensive schemes, is decently versatile. He's going to do what you need out of, that position at center. He has also played the four. It's been a while, but he has played the four in his career. So with there being this crunch at center where you have Clint Capella and Onyeka Kongwu, two starting, clear starting level bigs, already, and then having another, good rotation level role player big and Larry Nance, and then also having Cody Zeller, at the center. Larry Nance, just because there is no clear starting four between Mohamed Gay, David Roddy, and Dominic Barlow. It's not clear exactly who would start, or not start, but, back Jalen up off the bench. So I would imagine that some of those minutes would go to Larry Nance, or at least that's what I would do, because you have to slot out some type of role for him. And, definitely the center position is already taken care of. So definitely going to be interesting to see, but I know they're trying to move Larry Nance just because, he's probably not going to be, he is a good locker room guy, but he's probably not going to be thrilled to be the third string big. So definitely going to have to, get some minutes for him at four or whatever it may be, but it'll be really interesting to see what they do with, some of these slots and who starts, who, what lineups they go out with, how many minutes does Larry Nance get, etc. Just because there is a roster crunch here, especially at the center position, and, we could use some depth in other areas, so, what they can trade him up until the deadline, so they don't have to do it before the start of the season, but it'll be interesting to see what happens there. But it has been a fun time, as you can tell, if you've listened to, all of these podcasts. Like I said, a lot of this conversation and with the roster has changed over the last 5 to 6 weeks. They've, done a lot of rehauling with this roster. The first episode I made was about the issues. They clearly saw those issues as well and have made, changes to add size, point of attack defense to this roster. I still think we're lacking a little bit in just guard depth. Again, I'd like to see, someone else signed into that, Lou Williams type role. But that would, we'd have to move someone else off this roster. If I had to pick one, it'd be Cody Zeller, fourth string big. We just don't need him on this roster as well. Would definitely be helpful to be able to, but I don't think he can actually be traded before the season starts, so that's probably off the table. It's probably going to have to be Larry Nance or someone else, but we shall see what happens. I know this has been a long, my longest podcast yet, so appreciate everyone who has stuck around here. Again, this is James Arnold. This is the Hawks Watch podcast. You can go ahead and follow me on Twitter at HawksWatch99. But I hope everyone has a good start to their August, and take care. Thank you for listening.